Next on Meet the Farmer TV, stay tuned for part 2 of DuCard VineYards.
I'm Scott Elliff. I'm the owner of DuCard VineYards in Madison County, Virginia. I'm a wine grower, and you're watching Meet the Farmer TV.
Meet the Farmer TV is made possible by Planet Earth Diversified, Melly Productions, and Leslie P. Jenkins Photography and Graphic Design. Culpeper Media Network, helping to preserve the agricultural history of Virginia. And In the Kitchen magazine, serving the community and everyone who loves good food. Here we are again at DuCard VineYards for part 2 of Virginia's only solar winery. So right now they're in the field harvesting. What happens next?
Well, we're going to take these red grapes and after we harvest them, we're going to bring them into the winery and crush and destem them, which takes those stems off and actually cuts the grapes open so that they can start fermentation. We'll add the yeast to them, and it'll all bubble away together as a must, as a mash.
This is the thing where everybody's stomping around in the big tub?
Yeah, we don't stomp them by hand anymore, but we basically let them soak in these big bins for a while that hold about 1,000 pounds of grapes or so. And after a little while, the fermentation gets started, and we use all the equipment from all the elements of those berries, the seeds and the skins and the pulp and everything, all ferments together, and it's sort of a bubbling stew. And after that, then we'll press them off and leave the skins and the seeds behind and end up just with the fermented juice. And then we'll take that juice and clarify it and settle it multiple times, and then we'll age it in oak barrels. We use French and Virginia oak barrels here that provide some of the best aging environment for the wine. And then 2 years from now, wine in the bottle and ready to go. There's both an art and a science both in the vineyard and in the winery. And we talked about some of that in the vineyard. In the winery, it's a matter of selecting the specific yeast and how strong or weak it is, how well it can work with the sugar that's in the grapes. You have choices to make about what temperature to ferment in, and whether to ferment in a bin or in a barrel or in a stainless steel tank. And you have similar decisions to make about how you age the wine, whether it's in stainless steel, which a lot of whites are, and these are in particular, because we don't want to pick up the oak character to it. We want to keep the fresh fruitiness, the peaches and honeysuckle and that type of thing. But on the red wines, a better red wine is aged in oak, because that helps bring the complexity of the grapes out in the finished wine. So tons of decisions that you make. It doesn't end just when you harvest. You're just going to the next step of activity.
This is the outdoor tasting area here. So if I wanted to have a private party or somebody wanted to get married out here, is this the spot?
This is definitely the spot, yeah. I mean, for the right people in the right situation, yeah. It's if you really like nature and you want to be right in the outdoors and everything. We already had a wedding this summer. We had 100 people here out in a tent on the outside, and then we had dinner around on the patio here, and drinks and dancing inside. So it's not for everybody, and if you have too many people here, it would kind of overwhelm us. But we want to have a fun, interesting, personal experience. You could have that many here. That's what we had this summer. Yeah. Groups come out, people's book clubs, wine tasting clubs, groups that are interested in doing tastings and tours and get a snapshot of Central Virginia. It's a good place to do that. We're also talking to some companies, small companies, about having their strategic planning retreats out here, basically, and they can do a little gentle hike, maybe at White Oak Canyon first or whatever, and then come here and have some wine tasting and lunch and breakout groups and that kind of thing to move the ball forward for their company.
So just give me a call. You can take care of it.
Yeah, we can do all that. Happy to.
So if I come in as just off the road, I stumble down Old Rag here and decide I'm thirsty and need to go down to DuCard VineYards, these are the 5 wines that I'll get to taste when I come in.
Yep, that's right. The white grape that we focus on is the Viognier. We also do it in a slightly different style, what we call off-dry. That means it has just a little bit of residual sweetness that makes it really nice on a hot day. And we certainly have had a lot of those this summer. Sort of accentuates some of the aromas and adds a little bit of thirst quench to it.
So this is the one I put in my backpack when I left.
That would be a good one, yeah. This is the Popham Run Red. That's the Cabernet Franc and Petit Verdot blend that had the black pepperiness to it.
Yeah.
Next year, we're actually going to have Cabernet Franc as a varietal on its own, And we're also going to have Petit Verdot. We're going to bottle that on its own. And the Petit Verdot, it's in the barrels aging right now, is just fantastic. It's the best wine that we've ever produced here. So we look forward to that next spring. Then we have a varietal called Norton, and this is Virginia's native grape. And there aren't very many states, maybe California and us, are the only ones that have a native grape. There are about 25 of us maybe that grow this and make wine out of it, out of the 160 wineries that are in the state. And it's a very intense, much darker, deeper wine. Goes with heavy-duty foods because its aromas are strong and would overpower other foods. And then we have what's called a dessert wine, and this skinny little bottle is usually an indicator of that, also known as a sweet wine. It has a fair amount of residual sugar in it, although ours doesn't have as much as others do, and it's made with Vidal Blanc grapes. So 5 wines this year. We'll have 7 or 8 next year. We're also going to have a port-style wine next year made out of our Norton grapes, and more and better still to come.
Is this part of what Jefferson and who are the people that work with Jefferson, where they went across the street trying
they
to
didn't
keep
do
the
it.
vines?
Well, Norton's Virginia's native grape, but it wasn't discovered until the mid-1800s. So a lot of people ask whether this was part of the Jefferson's activities in grapes and wine, and it wasn't. Jefferson failed with these other varieties. They didn't really know about this variety. What's unique about this one is that it's actually so well acclimated to Virginia and our climate that it gets much less of the disease and insect issues and so forth that the others do. Jefferson had a problem known as phylloxera, which was a small insect that's in the roots underground that would eat the roots and not allow the vine to be vigorous like we see out in our vineyard. At the time, nobody, science, they didn't know what that was. And that infects grapevines throughout the world. So what we do now with all these other varieties, except for this one, because it's already set for here and resistant to things, is we graft the top part of the vine, which is a Cabernet Franc or a Viognier vine or a Chardonnay or whatever it is, to a rootstock that is phylloxera resistant. And that way the bottom part of the vine that's in the ground is better able to fight off the phylloxera louse, they call it, and while still pulling the nutrition out of the soil and the water out of the soil and putting it into Cabernet Franc grapes or Viognier grapes or Chardonnay or whatever.
Yeah, but the Norton doesn't require that.
Norton is grown on its own rootstock, native rootstock.
Now, we're standing on recycled wood from the barn that used to be here.
Well, we have a number of environmental features to this property, not just the solar panels that are outside, but on the inside as well. We tore down a barn and actually put it into a local company that turns it back into flooring for us. So this is 100-year-old reclaimed barnwood here. Mixed various species that you'd see outside. We're right at the edge of the Shenandoah National Park here. And so when you look out our big windows, you also see the same species out there that you actually see in our floor here. So it really sort of ties in with nature and brings the outside in as well.
And right now we're under solar lights. So these are lighting that's powered by your solar panels?
Powered by the solar panels. On a day like this when we're not using much electricity for inside usage or whatever, we're generating even more than we're using. So we push some back into the grid and our meter runs backwards.
All right. Yeah, we were looking at that, and I saw you were pulling money right out of that meter box. I want one of those.
Hopefully that's the way it'll work out. I'll let you know a year from now.
Okay. Now, you worked with a number of agencies to do this sort of thing. There were other tax credits and agency support to do this?
Yeah, you get help from the federal government and from the state, from stimulus package and so forth, and from the agriculture department, because everybody is trying to provide incentives to move us to more of a green economy and a green power approach. And I think that's sort of doubly appropriate in an agricultural setting, where we have basically a sunlight factory out in the vineyard that we already saw, and we have a sunlight electricity factory here on the inside as well. Well, we additionally have a lot of other environmentally oriented features to the place. I guess maybe I didn't know sort of where to stop, but let me show you some of the other things that we have then. Really support local agriculture and local foods, so we have cheese and chocolates and crackers and peanuts that are all from local suppliers. We even have the Buy Fresh, Buy Local guide here for our local counties. Recently we added a Viognier, which is one of our grapes, that somebody else makes a Viognier white wine vinegar from locally down in Nelson County. So we think that's pretty neat. So you can come here and not only have our local wines, but also have foods to accompany it. We also have tried hard to eliminate plastics in the tasting room, actually. And these are kind of interesting. See if you can tell what that's made out of. Does it look and feel like plastic?
It sure does.
Yeah, it's actually made out of potato starch.
Wow.
It's made in the USA.
Taterware.
Taterware, that's what it is, yeah. And made in the USA. Some of these things, you can get plastic alternatives that are made in China, but then the global, the footprint, green footprint is not so good because you have all the transportation costs halfway around the world. So we were able to get these US made, made out of potato starch. The cups are made out of cornstarch. They feel exactly like plastic cups.
Yep.
All these are completely compostable and biodegradable. We also we recycle our corks through a great program that exists down through Carpet Plus shop in Charlottesville. It's called Recork Seaville. And what we do is we just, after we've used up a wine bottle, we've opened a wine bottle, we put the cork in here. And consumers who stay here and drink a bottle of wine, we have them do the same thing. And this is turned into flooring and into soles for shoes and other products. So we're the latest entry and the latest participant in the Recork Seaville program.
That's great. So tell me about this now. The lightweight bottles, are they made out of titanium or something? Or what? How are you doing this?
Well, there are all kinds of things that make a small but possibly significant difference from an environmental standpoint. And one of the things is the bottles and the weight of these bottles. Historically, bottles have been very heavy. They have this punt at the bottom, very thick glass. If you hold that, that's a pretty heavy bottle, even when it's empty. What we did is went around and found some lighter weight bottles. And the glass technology is such that you can get exactly the same strength and exactly the same quality, really, but 33% lighter weight overall bottle. Feel this one by comparison.
Wow.
So
Whoa,
when these are trucked, halfway around the country and to here, and then when they're shipped out full to customers that order by phone or take it home or whatever, it's a lot less carbon footprint here to have less glass, less weight involved, less trucks driving down the road.
Right, and there's a lot of energy melting and making that glass.
Exactly right. So.
It's so light, I'm throwing it up in the air here. That is amazing. I would have never thought of that. The solar panels, recycling, the timber, that makes a lot of sense, but I never thought about making the bottles lighter. That's brilliant.
I think it's similar to everything that we do in the vineyards, we're trying to do in the winery as well, is that there are a lot of steps where you can do it the typical way it's always been done, or you can experiment and scratch around and try to do it incrementally a little bit better. And certainly that's what we try to do in the vineyard with our canopy management, with the trellising, with the pruning, with the fruit thinning, all of those elements. We're trying to do the same thing in the winery. If you just take sort of a mindset toward trying to do the best you can in each individual element, then you add it all together and you feel like you have a relatively green operation.
Right, so this is, I can tell this is a personal passion. This is not just Scott saying, well, I'm going to sell people this and make millions doing it. It's like you've put together an entire system to satisfy your own sensibilities of environmental sensitivity and sustainability.
Well, that's right. We're all individual entrepreneurs in this, and I do what I feel like is the right thing to do, and we're building it all up from scratch, so we're in a position to do that, and we decided it was a good thing to do, and so here we are.
All right. That's a great passion to have, to do that.
All those things are important, but they're ultimately sort of secondary to the quality of the wine that we have, and I know we'll be tasting that as well.
All right. Are these two of the wines that you've selected as your favorites, or is this? Tell me why we've got these here.
Okay, well, I pulled out one of our red wines and one of our white wines just for a quick sampling.
Okay.
And the red wine is what we call Popham Run Red. That's the little stream that goes through the property at the edge vineyard and the edge of the tasting room. And this has Cabernet Franc and Petit Verdot grapes in it. And the Cabernet Franc is the variety that we were out there tasting them and checking for that high maturity, high brix level, and the toastiness of the seeds and so forth, that when we get it really mature, it has that black pepper spiciness in it. So I'd like you to try that wine and see if you get those elements to it. has a very garnet red color to it. And when you swirl it around, the aromas really get nicely released.
Now tell me about, what is it about the red wine's breathing? What is happening when we're doing a little swirl?
Well, when you swirl it around, the aromas in the wine release into the bowl of the glass.
So that we can, like,
and then you smell it, and you'll smell the aromas, and sort of a cherry, raspberry, deep fruit elements to it. A lot of your taste is really smell, so it's important to get the smells of it. And then just try just a little bit and sort of gargle it around in your mouth, and see if you get the black pepper spiciness with it.
Okay. Oh yeah, very fresh, and yeah, I like that. Even the hint of the chocolate you're talking about.
A little bit, just a tiny bit, yeah. Red wine and chocolate is a great match generally. This wine we recommend this with pasta and red sauce, maybe barbecued chicken, sort of medium level foods. It's not an overly intense wine. It's what we call ready to drink, fairly light tannin, but a lot of fruitiness to it. And I think people like something that's what we call fruit forward, or fruit focused, I guess. And especially when you get that extra little spiciness or the tang and the black pepper part of it,
great.
It's a fairly unique element.
Now tell me, as you're tasting these things, does the palate change as you're, if you've been tasting all day, it seems like it's going to be hard to detect.
Well, it's a shame if you're tasting all day, isn't it? But after a while, you
that's
get...
what you do,
no,
right? You're just here tasting all day long, making sure it's right.
You get what's called palate fatigue after a while, and the professional wine tasters and so forth, if they're tasting and scoring hundreds of wines during the day, I don't know how they possibly do it. It's good to have small amount in the glass so you can swirl it around and have small amounts at a time and just continually refill, we hope, Right. It also changes in the glass a little bit here, in that when wine is too cold, especially a white wine, you really don't get the aromas to it. You want this wine to be just slightly chilled, like maybe 60 degrees, 55 degrees, something like that, so you feel a little bit of chill in your hand. But as this wine warms up, it'll release even more aromas and vapors, I guess, and the aromas will intensify. So it's fun while you're wine tasting to kind of continually swirl and see it change. One of our wines actually changes just a ton in about the first 5 minutes after it's open.
Right.
And the breathing, basically getting a little air in contact with the wine, is very helpful for releasing all the aromas and stuff. You're making me thirsty here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been to some wine tastings of various years of the same grapes, and it's interesting to watch how they age in the glass.
They do age, and also Virginia is the kind of place where every year is going to be different. We talked about how important Mother Nature is in all of this. Some years we don't get as much sunlight. Some years we get too much rain. Some years we get spring frost or hurricanes right at harvest time or whatever. So I guess here we don't try to manage around that. We just celebrate the difference in year-to-year vintages. There really is a difference. 2007 was a fabulous vintage. 2008, which is a vintage for red, was really good. 2010 is going to be a great vintage, I think, for both reds and whites.
What are you expecting out of this sort of dry, high bricks harvest season?
Very intense fruit. Because there's been very little rainfall, the berries are concentrated, so the sugar accumulation, the bricks, is especially high, and it adds to the flavors when you have small, concentrated fruit. Of course, it's sort of nature's revenge. In the years when you get your best fruit, you have the least of it.
Right.
So that explains price differences a little bit too, because you're doing all the same work and you're getting a relatively small harvest out of it, because that's just what nature gives you. So you take that and process it.
To your wine making, if the brix is too low, you don't have enough sugar to really ferment it correctly?
Yeah, you make adjustments in the winery, but you end up oftentimes with a sort of inferior wine. When you have a high brix level and you have pH that's at the right level, then it makes winemaking a lot easier. Less manipulation, really. yeah.
That's manipulated.
Yeah.
Can it get too concentrated?
You can get too concentrated, too high a bricks, and it really makes the wine sort of hot to the taste, really. That's a high alcohol type of wine. That's been a style in California, but it's a style that sort of ebbs and flows. And California, since it's so hot and there's no rain, they always have very high alcohol wines. We don't normally have that situation, so it's not normally an issue for us. But in a year like this, we have an opportunity to make something that's very comparable to a California style, a relatively high alcohol, high concentrated wine. I think it's going to be good.
This is really wonderful.
Thank you. The white wine, the white grape that we grow here is called Viognier. It's a French variety. We make it in a couple of different styles. But the distinctive element of it is it has very much a peaches, honeysuckle, wildflower, Virginia, Central Virginia meadow type approach to it. And the aromas in particular are very refreshing, very peachy, I think is what we get right away. Yeah. If we're going to do this in Virginia, I want to do something that is different than California. I, at least, don't want to have an oaky, buttery Chardonnay, which is sort of all the rage in California. I want something that really expresses the place that we have here, and expresses Central Virginia, mountain edge, and so forth. And peaches and honeysuckle and wildflowers, I think, which are sort of inherent in that Viognier grape, really come out well in this wine and gives us something that's unique and distinctive. Not just for us, but for Virginia overall in our industry.
While I'm getting this private tasting here, Scott, how would the general public come and get this experience?
We're open Friday through Sunday, plus Monday holidays, and there's no appointment or anything. You just find us down at the end of the road and come on in. And we take you through the 5 different wines that we have. We pour similar sort of small amounts. We like to have a person-to-person experience so we can talk about the history and some of the things you've asked about, and also describe the wines and so forth. And then afterwards, you can buy wine and sit out on our great patios, or take wine home with you, or whatever you like.
That's wonderful. So I just come down the road. If I don't see somebody immediately, just look down the vineyard and find somebody working and drag them in here to give me a wine.
There'll be somebody behind the bar Friday through Sunday and Monday holidays. Okay. We also have the state has a great wine guide, and a lot of people use this. We're the 161st winery in the state. And all the wineries are in here in a very detailed map that has their location and has directions and so forth. So we see a lot of people who come, you can see them in their cars as they're coming in, that they've got this map all opened up, and the passenger is navigating all the way into the winery.
Right.
And wine tasting can either be here, it's great as a destination, or you can come here and go to a couple other places that are up and down the road as well if you're making a day of it, or stay at a local B&B or something like that. For a lot of people, it's a weekend day trip getaway, especially from DC or Richmond or Fredericksburg, or Charlottesville even. And some of that, and some is weekend stay people. Our website has lists of local bed and breakfasts and other attractions and events and so forth that are in the area.
That's wonderful.
And you can find this at all the welcome centers on the interstate, and in a lot of shops, grocery stores, tourist information centers, all kinds of places. And you can also get it online by looking at virginiawine.org. Has all the information on the wineries and the events that they have during the year.
Now tell me about some of the other things you're involved in. The Piedmont Environmental Council. I know we've talked to you at the Forest Lakes Farmers Market. You helped get that started in Forest Lake.
Right, I started that, and I'm on the board of the Piedmont Environmental Council, and also focused recently with PEC on energy conservation. So the things we talked about here about being green and energy efficient is sort of a walk the walk element here. If I'm going to do it in my board work, I guess I feel like I should do it in my actual, business property and that type of thing. Also involved with the Piedmont Virginia Community College. And we have a program here. It's sort of a pay-it-forward kind of approach, I guess, because when I was learning about this stuff, I didn't know anything when I started, but I would ask everybody else. I'd try to learn as I went. And we want to build up, and people were very helpful. But what we want to do is build up our own level of expertise and workforce within Virginia. So PVCC has a wonderful program of viticulture and enology where people take classes and they learn how to do this kind of work. And one of the classes we have is here. And basically sort of Tom Sawyer style, they come out here and they adopt a row of our grapevines and come out periodically during the summer and do all the tasks that are involved, from pruning in the early spring all the way to harvest. We're having some of the people from the class come to our harvest to help us with that, and that's the last class of the year. So at the end of a full season of doing this, people realize up close and personal what it's really like to do this, and they get the skills so that they can become vineyard managers or assistant winemakers, or maybe they even want to start their own operation or whatever. Or they could decide that it's way too much work and way too crazy and have too many uncertainties and involve too much money and all kinds of things, in which case it's better to know that based on taking a class than to get into it and realize you're in over your head with it. So we have a blast, and people that are in the class love it, and afterwards they get to drink wine from the grapes and the vines that they actually helped tend through the year. And there's nothing like that as a cool thing in your private party at home, to break open a bottle that comes from vines that you actually worked on.
That's right.
So we're really pleased to be part of that program.
It seems like that hands-on experience is so important, and it's missing in so many things today. I mean, almost everybody just Googles something if they want to know what it is.
Yeah, and this is something that really does involve a lot of hands-on experience. It's funny, when people get up close and personal with the vine, they always turn to me and say, this is a lot different than when I saw the slide of it or when I read about it in the book. You know, I'm eyeball to eyeball with the grapevine, and I have to make my cuts and pull off the leaves and choose different clusters and all the other elements that are there. And there's nothing like being faced with it and having to do it yourself. I don't know about you, but when I think back on school, you know, you ever think you had too many lab courses and then not enough classes where you just sat in a classroom? No, usually learning these days is tons of talk and classroom and book learning, and not very much lab. Right. Well, this is a real laboratory out here, and we do lots of experiments, and we do a lot of hands-on things, so it's really an experiential type approach. Yeah, these days I think we're all a little bit more sort of disconnected from things, and one of the things that's interesting for me, because I was a consultant and a business guy and a lot of book learning and that type of thing, is that this has brought me much closer to nature and much more sort of integrated and understanding on, you know, the bottle of wine is not just walking up to the tasting room or popping a cork. It actually starts all the way out in the vineyard, and all the elements that are involved in doing it, and the trials and tribulations and effort and so forth, decisions that have to be made. It brings you a lot closer to nature, and it's sort of oddly fulfilling that way.
Yeah. As we sip this wine, we're actually getting a snapshot of a number of years of the nature right here.
Yeah,
location.
Really, this year and every year is the culmination of both all of my prior experience here and all the experience that we have in the state. And you know, probably half the wineries in the state have only been in operation 3 or 4 years or less. So you imagine how much more experience the whole industry is getting every year. We both get more wineries, but every winery that exists and every vineyard that exists has another year under their belt about dealing with issues and solving problems and making mistakes and rectifying them the next year. So we hope that, you know, we're getting better and better as an industry, and certainly I feel that way in our operation, and the best is yet to come for Virginia wine.
And certainly here at DuCard VineYards, it's getting greener.
Cheers.
Well, there you have it. DuCard VineYards here in the beautiful mountains of Etland, Virginia.
But really the objective here is for us in Virginia to try to increasingly train our own labor force of vineyard managers and assistants and people who can work in our growing little industry. There are a variety of different ways that we can make sure that we do our production in harmony with nature.
Meet the Farmer TV is made possible by Planet Earth Diversified, Melly Productions, and Leslie P. Jenkins Photography and Graphic Design. Culpeper Media Network, helping to preserve the agricultural history of Virginia. And In the Kitchen magazine, serving the community and everyone who loves good food.